Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Tech video I'm going to be talking about my thoughts so far of Guild Wars 2. And Marta has already covered this somewhat from the perspective of someone who's fairly new to MMOs. I however have had quite a lot of experience with say World of Warcraft, Aion, Age of Conan and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic among others. So with that said, let's just jump into it. So, the game's been out for a few days now, and it's had a few hiccups on launch. One of them, of course, is the world server goes down occasionally. There were problems with email authentication at the start, where people couldn't authenticate their email address and basically confirm that that email address was valid. This, of course, has kind of led rise to some hacking. And of course, there is some hacking that's going on at the moment. Quite how prolific it is at this point in time is difficult to say, because obviously the vocal minority are going to be a lot louder than the majority who have not been hacked. So it's kind of difficult to say on that, but let's just say that, you know, it could have been handled maybe slightly better on that front, but there you have it. So the game's performance is fairly good. Graphically it looks pretty, as you'd expect from a later generation of MMO. So what about the good and the bad points of the game so far? Well, I do like the fact it's free online. Obviously you pay the initial, cost, whatever it is. I don't like the fact that they are charging more for it through their official site for the digital download. But that seems to be par for the course. It's the same with World of Warcraft, it's the same with Knights of the Republic when it was launched, and a few other games as well. So they're not doing anything different to the rest of the market, it's just how it is. So, what about the game itself? Well, it handles really nicely. I'll get into the classes in a moment. In the video you can see I'm just playing as a Necromancer. I've made a couple of characters. I'm just trying to test out at the moment which ones I actually really like. I'm going to get into that in a moment, however. So, I really like the questing system. I really like the maps, that type of thing. The map system in questing is really nice. It basically gives you a good indication of where you have to go, what you have to do, and so on. There are going to be some people who don't like that because they feel that the hand is being held too much. I'm personally not one of those. I'll tell you why. To me, questing isn't a chore. There's no skill in it, I don't think anyway. There's skill if the quest is difficult. There's, killing a certain mob or, a boss or what have you in a certain way and not causing over aggro and pulling, I don't know, half the room or something. That's skill. But finding out where the damn item is or the person you have to speak to, that's not skill. That's just a pain in the ass. And as someone who played early on in the Burning Crusade, for example, on WoW, it was a pain. It was really just frustrating on some mobs. I mean, most of the descriptions were fairly good on Blizzard's credit. It was pretty decent, so you could kind of figure it out. But the odd one, you had to look at coordinates, otherwise you'd just be there all day. And for someone who just wanted to level up, it just wasn't conducive to that. I'm not ragging on World of Warcraft. It was what the market was doing at the time, and they did it really well. I'm just saying that now, of course, WoW has changed their tune quite a bit, and there is quite a lot of inline in-game help, so that's good. But with Guild Wars 2, you can tell it was meant for that from the ground up, and they've done a really good job for the most part. There are a few niggles here and there, but I can't really complain. It does the job, it looks pretty, and it's all fluid and moves nicely. In terms of performance, once again, it's pretty good. The game's engine's definitely pretty damn rock solid. There have been a few graphical glitches here and there, mostly to do with missing textures, particularly on the floor, but it's very early on. I'm pretty sure that'll be patched, and it could just be my graphics setup, my graphics card, or the drivers I'm using. I'm using the latest NVIDIA drivers that's currently available. I'm sorry, I don't remember the version number offhand, but I know that they were only released recently, and they're past the version that's recommended by Guild Wars 2, the launcher, because the previous versions I did not weren't updated enough. There we go. They're 306.2s, they're the betas for Windows 8 and 7, and Vista, of course, 64-bit. So there you have that. Combat's quite nice. I like the rolling and the dodging. It does seem to work. I also like the fact that pretty much all the characters can heal themselves. They do it differently for the most part. Necromancers, for example, can sacrifice their pets, which heals them for a percentage, which is fine. Others have direct heal spells, and so on. I quite like that. All the classes have a lot of survivability. It's basically meant so that you feel like you can take on quite a lot of stuff. If you guys have ever played as, say, a paladin, on particularly mid Wrath of the Lich King, they were pretty damn great for soloing. You kind of feel like that with most of the classes. I admit, at the moment, I'm still fairly early, but I can tell from what people have told me who are pretty high level, it pretty much goes like that all the way through. So that's good, because, you know, it's not really cool when you just die instantly. So you've also, of course, got the fight to survive mechanic. So that's pretty nice as well. What about the overall things such as the weapons, such as, for example, equipping different weapons, giving you different skills? I'll be honest, I wasn't a massive fan of that at the start. In fact, it was one of the things that actually put me off the game. I was one of those players who loved the World of Warcraft talent system, despite the fact it was pretty damn messy at the start. It was very bloated and so on, but I think it worked. And I wasn't particularly a big fan of the fact that, you know, a weapon changing the skills. Obviously, for a melee character, that somewhat made some sense to me, but, you know, for a caster, I didn't really like it. But I have since played the game a little bit, and I have to say that I am kind of changing my tune. I do think it works quite nicely. I think maybe it needs a bit more work, but obviously the game's still really early in development, and I think it does do what it says in the tin. Obviously some skills are shared between weapons and so on, but for the most part it does work and feels quite nice. Combat, as I've said before, overall is quite exciting, and the game definitely launches you in a very exciting environment. It doesn't feel like you're kind of just along for the ride at the start. It feels very almost like a Hollywood movie. You're jumping right in there into some action, which is quite nice. So overall, in that respect, I think it's quite cool. Guild Wars 2 definitely has some really nice features as well, such as the personal story. It does remind me, it's somewhat reminiscent of Age of Conan, the personal story in that. Age of Conan's personal story was really good.
Nice to see you.
I believe the first city, it's been bloody ages since I played the game, but I think the first cities the Courtage. No doubt someone's going to correct me, but it was really good. And the first 20 levels of something like that on Age of Conan were probably actually the best I've ever played on an MMO. It was really well thought out. It was just really nice. But the rest of the game just couldn't hold up to it, and I stopped playing because, you know, the later content just became more and more elusive. You know, you could tell that they rushed out the game. And for example, there was a lot less voice acting as you went further into the game, and it's a real shame because Age of Conan, when I first started to play it, was really good. But then, of course, you start to get, you know, realise how imbalanced it was, for example, which is a massive shame. Some people really like the system, the personal story on Guild Wars 2. Other people think it's a gimmick. I don't mind it. I think it makes something a bit more interesting than just, you know, the standard affair, and at least get to kind of impact things a little bit more. But at the same time, I don't think it's groundbreaking, and, you know, I don't think I'd personally say that it's worth buying the game just to experience the personal story or anything like that. I am fairly early into it, however, and no doubt I will continue to play it. I'm going to more talk about the classes at the moment. I have experience with a couple of them. On Age of Conan, I played for a while, as I said, and I played several classes on that. And World of Warcraft, pretty much the same thing. I leveled a Shadow Priest at the start, then I switched to a Death Knight for tanking purposes. Primarily I did do a little bit of DPS. Then I basically rolled a Warlock alt, and I also kind of leveled a Rogue as well. Also did a bit of Paladin work, and other MMOs I just kind of messed around, did various bits and pieces like the Old Republic. I was a Sith Inquisitor. So, what do I think of the classes on this? Well, I've played a couple of them so far. I think overall they are good. They feel very solid, the ones I've played anyway. I definitely need to check out more of them. However, I have seen warrior gameplay and I have seen a few others. I must say that the classes definitely have a lot of survivability. They also have a lot of excitement. You know, you feel like you're strong and powerful even at the start, as I've mentioned. Personally, I have a slight issue connecting with a particular class at the moment. I don't feel that the classes are bad or anything like that. I just haven't got drawn in and think, you know what, this is the class I really want to play as. I've tried out a Mesmer and I've tried out a Necromancer primarily, but obviously, you know, that's early, and whether I'll stick to those or whether I'll go to completely different modes. One of the things, of course, a lot of people are going to ask is it worth actually checking the game out? Particularly for those of you who are really hardcore into MMOs. That's a very difficult question. A lot of people are already pissed because, you know, some people are reporting their accounts got hacked, that kind of thing. People are complaining, of course, because, you know, the server's going down and so on. But that, to me, is par for the course. The hacking is a problem. It's very early on at the moment. You know, the problem is just kind of popping on my Facebook, and I'm going to do some further research on this later to find out just how deep it's going. Some people are reporting they've had their account stolen for several days now. Other people are literally saying that it's just literally disappeared the last day or two. But who the hell knows? You know, some of them could just be saying that, and others, you know, could have given their password to a friend for all I know. So I'll have to see just how, you know, prolific that really is. And as I said before, the vocal minority is always more loud than the silent majority. It's just how things are. But as for other things, whether the game's actually, you know, worth buying, I think the game's not going to, you know, be a disaster. I think that's fairly clear by now. It's still selling very well, unless the developers really screw up, and I mean like drastically screw up, and I don't really think they can screw up that level. The game's going to do well. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a WoW topping. Obviously, a lot of MMOs, there's always the buzz when a new MMO comes out, and then of course it settles down and people decide, hey, you know what, I want to stick with this, or hey, you know what, I prefer World of Warcraft, or X, or Y, or Z, or what have you. At the moment, the MMO market is pretty competitive. Obviously, you've got Mist of Pandaria launching. Star Wars: The Old Republic is going free to play. Well, at least somewhat semi-free to play anyway. And you've got some other MMOs which are doing the complete free-to-play model, but you have to pay for certain services. With the Old Republic, I believe, I haven't checked on this, it's been a while since I've looked at the news, but I believe it's if you want to do certain instances, that kind of thing, you have to cough up cash, which is fair enough. They obviously need to, you know, make their money somehow or another, and I believe that's on a monthly subscription still, but if you want to pay for free, you can. That's pretty cool. I very much did like the story on Knights of the Republic. I had a few issues with the game, and I basically just stopped playing it. I don't know why exactly. I think it's just basically I had so much other stuff to do, and I just cancelled my account and it went from there. It was nothing against the game itself. So Guild Wars 2 is definitely a good game. It has some problems at the moment launching. There are some server performance issues. There have been a few bugs I've noticed while recording in terms of performance, but I think they're related to the recording software. I don't think they're related at all to the game. I've noticed that sometimes some games don't really behave so well with recording software. You have to use other recording software and it's a whole thing. But generally speaking, the game runs fine on 1080p and so on. Obviously, the better system you've got, the more effects you can turn on. I'm running with pretty much everything on max, and it doesn't really seem to have any particular burden on my system. So there you have it. Overall, In Guild Wars 2 there was also a lot of scope for personalisation, particular characters and how they look. This is of course one of the big problems with World of Warcraft. A lot of people didn't really like the character creation. They thought it was a bit basic in terms of how they could make their character look, that kind of thing. In Guild Wars 2 it's not really like that. You can definitely put in a lot of customization. It's not quite to the level of, say, a Skyrim or so on, but it's definitely pretty good. It's definitely pretty up there, so your character won't necessarily look the same as the others. And just like Aion as well, you've got armor dies and so on. So that's pretty nice. The game does remind me in some ways of Aion. It definitely has some elements of Age of Conan and Aion thrown in. Of course, the general overall feel of World of Warcraft as well. I'm not saying that it's a clone of those games or anything like that. I'm just saying it does have elements that remind me of it, which is fair enough. It's, you know, a certain market. So what's my initial thoughts? Well, I'm fairly early on. I've only gained a few levels on the game, but I just want to throw this out there. I'm going to be playing it a lot over the next couple of weeks. I don't necessarily know yet if I'm going to stick with it and, you know, make it my new raiding game. I stopped raiding on World of Warcraft around the time Cataclysm kind of was peaking out. Before that, I stopped raiding my guild, then I was doing some just, you know, pugging, basically. And then I just kind of slowly got out of it as Cataclysm was launched. And then I kind of went back to it for a little bit. So I haven't really had an MMO in my life. Some people would argue that's a really good thing. Others would, of course, say I'm missing out. Personally speaking, I do miss certain things about MMO, so I wouldn't mind. I probably am going to check out World of Warcraft again at some point or another. I don't necessarily know if that means that I'll never touch Guild Wars 2 again, you know, when World of Warcraft comes out. I am enjoying it. It's that simple. I quite like it. There is a lot of good content in it. It feels a very solid game, and more to the point, when I'm looking around the environments and so on, I think it just looks impressive. I'll give you an example. I know I keep using WoW, but you know, there's 9 million or 10 million players or something like that on World of Warcraft. I'm pretty sure most people would have played it. So I think it's just the best audience for me to appeal to. But you know, when you're just kind of looking over the landscape first time when you're leveling, for me, it was when I first started, as I said, as a priest, and I was on a Draenei priest, actually, which is one of the reasons I always play a female in all the games, by the way, because it's just a habit I got into from that, because I played as Draenei. I later on switched to Horde, but you know, that's part and parcel of it. And, you know, the female Draenei just look a lot better than the males. And apologies to anyone who prefers the males, but that's just how I feel. And when I was kind of going from their area, and then I was going for all of, like, Darkshore and so on, and I just thought to myself, wow, this just looks really cool. And I was quite a big fan of the storyline of World of Warcraft. Particularly Wrath the Lich King, which is why it's probably my favourite overall expansion, despite the fact that I feel they did weaken some aspects of the gameplay. I think overall story-wise it was my favourite. The Burning Crusade, however, when I, you know, stepped into the Dark Portal the first time, and obviously you go into Hellfire Peninsula, some people are probably getting groans in their head as soon as they hear the Hellfire Peninsula.
And see how friends and neighbors alike have turned out to welcome
you
home.
There is something really magical about it.
Or is this just an excuse
I'll be honest,
to get your
most
friends together and
MMOs that
see
I've played
what's in my
since
wine
then,
cupboard?
I never really got that feeling. I just kind
Heroes
of
are
got
always
to the feeling of,
popular.
hey, you know what, there's
These
a crap
nice
ton of
people
stuff to
simply
do, I'll
insisted
get
on
around to it at some
congratulating
point,
you
and
and
then I just,
celebrating your
you know,
brave victory.
pretty much followed the question
you
line, and that was
insisted
it.
on breaking
With
out
WoW,
your finest
one of
food
the
and drink
reasons
for the
that I
occasion.
kind of didn't like some of the
You
changes
deserve
is
no
because
less.
of the fact that they
Still, I
added
can't take all
flying
the
into the
credit.
old world.
Your
Although I do
household
realise that
staff
was a necessary
most
change,
helpful, even
I did
eager
really like
to
the fact there were
facilitate the
some areas
process.
that you just couldn't get to
I
normally,
wish
and
my
you had to be
servants loved me
creative in
half
how
as
to get
much.
them.
But then, I am
Searing Gorge,
lovable
the
in other
pass there, I
ways.
believe it's Searing Gorge, where you had to basically kind
And the
of
less
wall
said
climb,
about that, the better.
and you could get basically
Now, wipe
all
off
the way
that smirk
around
and let's go enjoy my
to
best roast
near
duck
Etherwin
and
Forest,
brandy.
that kind of thing. It was really cool. And I understand, obviously, the game has to change, and I'm not saying World of Warcraft sucks or anything now. I still think it's a really good game, despite the fact that I don't play it anymore. But this game does promote similar feelings to me. I do feel that, you know, wow, I wonder what the later areas look like, and, you know, so on. So while I'm questing, even in this video, sometimes I'm just messing around. It's not like I'm particularly playing seriously, because at the moment, to be honest, the game's not that challenging at the start. Despite just derping around, not really paying much attention, you know, I don't really feel like I'm ever in danger of particularly dying. There was once, and I do also like the fight to survive mechanic. But obviously, as the game goes further on, you're going to be put under more and more stressful situations. That's just how it is, and I expect it of that as well. So overall, I'm quite enjoying it. I definitely am going to continue to play it. Probably going to keep putting out videos on RGT. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be like the main thing the channel's known for or anything like that. As most of you know, I really like doing first impression stuff, and also really like doing tech videos, although they're a lot harder to do than first impressions. That's just how it is, unfortunately. I have a really cool project actually I'm working on. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to do it, because there's a lot of game footage I need to get from various games. But when you see it, you'll understand it's really cool. So, as I was saying, quite enjoy the game. I don't think it's the best experience I've ever had in my life on video games. I know that might upset some of you, I might get your downvote, but that's just my personal feelings. On the other hand, I do think it's a very solid MMO, and I think it's not going to fail. I think it's up in the air how many people do continue to play it. After all, you know, in theory at least, they could sell 2 million copies, 5 million copies, and then every single person, it's, you know, possible that every single person does stop playing it, but that's not going to happen. Let's just face it. The reality is, of course, that the numbers are going to settle down somewhat, and you know, we're going to see just how popular it is. I don't think it's going to, you know, die or anything like that. I think that's just silly, and I think it's going to be a good, fun game. There's going to be a lot of competitive play, no doubt, on it as well, in terms of, you know, PvE world firsts. So hopefully we'll see another MMO flourish. Why?
You're kidding, right?
In an ideal world, I'd like to see 5 or 6 really big MMOs. Pardon me, sorry. Well, maybe not 5 or 6, but at least, you know, 2 or 3 really big ones, bigger than WoW, or at least the same size. Each one kind of rabbit punching the other one, so each expansion is released, you know, each one surges. Why? Because it just keeps the ideas fresh. Obviously, WoW has been out for a while. I don't want to turn this into a, you know, World of Warcraft, what it's done wrong video, but there are things I don't like about Mists of Pandaria. There are certainly a lot of things I do like about it, you know, just from reading about it. I haven't tested it out or anything like that, other than briefly around a friend's house. As he did have access to the beta, it felt quite nice and so on. But there you have it. So, as I was saying, this is not a particular like-for-like comparison. I didn't really go through the features. This is just an initial thought, you know, my initial thoughts of the game, what I think is good about it, what I think is bad about it. They might change as the game progresses. If you're wondering, you know, if your finger's hovering over the buy button, or, you know, you see the game in a local store, should you get it? My answer is probably yes. I don't think you're going to find that, you know, it dies. I don't think you're going to waste your money. You might find you don't like the game. Let's be honest. You could buy any game. You could, you know, you could buy Resident Evil 6 and you don't like it. It's just that simple. So there might be that, but at least you might have to think to yourself, hey, you know, I've coughed up, you know, a couple of months subscription, and then I found that I didn't like the end game or what have you. You just found, hey, you know what, the leveling was okay, and, you know, at least it gave me some entertainment. So there's that. Look at it this way, if you get yourself, you know, 15, 20 and 30 hours out of the game, it's not that bad value. If you shop around, you can get the game for about £35 in the UK. I don't know what it is in dollars. So you're looking at about $35. So even if you look at it, you know, you're playing for a couple of hours. Sorry, about, you know, 15, 20 hours. Still not bad. It's about £2 an hour of entertainment. It's a hell of a lot better than a movie theatre. Let's just be honest. So yeah, think it's a good game. It does have its faults. We're going to have to see how it develops over the next couple of months, as it's still very early on in development. I realise this has kind of been a bit of an all-over-the-bits video. It's not really had a singular focus, and there's obviously many reasons for that, as I was trying to compare it to as many things as possible and just kind of throw out all my initial thoughts. It's not really focusing, as I said, on one specific area of the game. But I think you've kind of got an idea now where I'm coming down on it. I'm going to release some videos on various classes, that type of thing, so you can get an idea of, you know, their gameplay and, you know, overall bits and pieces. And in the video you can kind of get some idea of, you know, just random open world derping and questing, as well as, of course, a little bit of personal story. I figure that's pretty good. It's also fairly early on, so... It's also fairly early on, so hopefully you guys will find that it's also fairly early on, so hopefully you guys will find that it doesn't spoil too much. I will be releasing some later level gameplay video. I'm probably going to be creating a few other classes and just kind of messing around, really, to be honest. I don't want to really limit myself at the moment, just kind of get a feel for the game. That's what I did on pretty much all MMOs, and I just think it's kind of fun that way. You know, find out what character you really like and just kind of stick with it. So anyway, yeah, I think this has been one of those kind of all over the shop videos, really. It's not really one of those videos where I had a specific purpose for it, other than just to give my initial thoughts. I will be releasing some more videos, just going over my initial thoughts of certain classes, and kind of just, you know, covering the game as and when, really. So, hopefully you found it somewhat helpful anyway. So, bye for now and take care.